type of situations in the future.
So what do you recommend?
I'm just recommending that we get a report on when is it that we should be able to ratify such things and when we shouldn't, when, as a practice for the board, more of a board practice. I don't know if you have anybody else has any comments, any suggestions?
I guess I'm still trying to.
I guess I just wanted to sort of get a better grasp of how we're doing this right now. And not necessarily, it is practice, and it is, I guess, legal to do that, to do it this way if the board approves of it. But I think if we don't have any guidelines or any agreement to do that, I think.
Well, from my understanding, Ms. Mott, is that the people who spent the money had the authorization at the time to spend the money. This goes back to what, 2018?
Yes, this does go back to 2018.
So they had the authorization under their charge to spend this money. The issue really was there was no overseeing factor or overseeing person, if you want to nail it, a person, but it's really a business process issue. But there's no overseeing factor to look at all of these accounts, all these people who are authorized spending, to make a judgment, say, geez, they overspent. Is that correct? There was no check in place to determine that. Is that my understanding correct?
Correct. Yes. Each individual person, when conducting their spending, would have had no way to know that the entirety of all of the spending had gone over the limit, right? Even procurement department, because the system was not set up in a way to aggregate all of the spending into one report. There has been no single person at the college that would have known when they conducted their spending. They would not have been able to know that the spending was over the aggregate amount.
So the deficiency really is an administrative oversight.
Yes.
Okay.
Chair Stoma, could I jump in for a second?
Yes, sir.
If I may, thank you. I disagree politely, respectfully, disagree with what Trustee Murillo asked, because I think what he asked, and Mario, if I'm wrong, tell me, are provisions for the system to spend money under certain emergencies. Overspending is not the same. And those are two completely different things. I mean, as simply as I can put this, they just spent money they were not authorized to spend. They spent the 3 million and then they spent 1.7 million more. That's not justified under any ratification, any emergency spending, or anything in the agenda backup. It's just not. They spent money they shouldn't have spent. We're trying to justify it here at the board table. It's not justifiable.
And Trustee Sullivan, Chairman, if I may
Go
just
ahead.
real quickly. So we are approving something that has already been spent.
Yes. Yes.
And I don't disagree with you, Trustee Sullivan. I look at it from a business process root cause, okay? They overspent. At the time they overspent, they didn't know they were overspending because there was no oversight to tell these folks, hey, you're overspending based on our current budget. Is that correct? That's mine. So that's all I'm trying to point out here. That indeed, if they had cognizant knowledge of what the spending limit was and they overspent, that's one issue. If they did not have the resources or the reporting authority to look at and to determine this, then okay, it's a mistake on their part, yes, but it's really the responsibility of administration because they didn't provide the correct reporting metric, if you will, so they will know. That's my point I want to make. It's not a policy issue. It's really a business process issue. And to rectify that from happening again, well, I understand Ms. Mott saying that she's now put in a process to where they can now look at these accounts. I can tell how much is being spent. Maybe over the next 1 or 2 months, you can look at that and you can tell, if the process is working. That's what you put in place to remediate this so it doesn't happen again. Is that correct?
Yes.
So where you're correctly right. But I mean, how do you put the blame? You have to put the blame on the oversight of the administration. But there's no point in that, in my opinion. This is my opinion. When we're taking corrective action to right or wrong. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what else to say here. I think it's just what it is. You know, there's a lack of business process. She's recognized that she's putting this into place, and she wants to move forward. And certainly we can request, and I would request that you come back and report to us on this once you have a result and tell us how this is working. But to not approve it is where I'm going with this. If we don't approve it, then we put people in jeopardy. And I just can't vote for that, in my opinion. So that's where we are, folks, in this. Is there any questions regarding understanding? Does everybody understand the issue here? That's the issue.
May I respond, please, sir?
Yeah,
I'm not asking the board to go with me to vote no. I want to be very clear on that.
okay,
It would never be my intention for any employee to have to assume financial responsibility or liability for something they did in the course of their job. Period. I can't be any more clear than that. But I'm voting against the item.
okay,
That's all.
fair enough.
We can actually, I'll make a motion to call the question, and I'm the guy that had it pulled.
That's fine. No, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Does everybody understand what we're voting on here? That's the main thing.
We have to. It's already paid out. But we're gonna talk about 40 or.
Turn your mic out. Sure.
We're gonna talk about 38 right after this, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We're going to bring 38 up. Yeah, trustee King.
Well, I agree with trustee Sullivan with regard to the fact that you simply cannot overspend. No question about that. But as I've heard our discussion here today, I understand that it was really, as much as anything, it was a system-wide error. And I would simply hate to see an individual or several individuals due to a systemic error caught with this kind of financial obligation. And the key to me is that now we know, and we've already taken steps to make sure that something like this does not recur, because we'll keep better tabs on multiple individuals dipping into an account. And so from my standpoint, yes, we cannot do this, but in this instance, I think we have to step back and say it was systemic, and we just can't let this happen again. But for now, we're trying to correct the situation and not put anyone or any group of people in jeopardy.
Is that it, sir? Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Everyone understand what we're voting on here? All right, thank you. Then I'll ask a motion for approval on item number 37.
So moved.
Second. Then do we want to do, well, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Note that trustee Sullivan's vote is no, so the item passes. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Trustee. Okay.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry, you voted no?
I did.
I'm sorry, ma'am. So let's note that trustee Sullivan, trustee Broussard voted no. Yeah, I think it still passes, doesn't it? Yeah, still passes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Him too.
Do we need a roll call for it? Do we need a roll call vote, sir? All right, thank you. Item 38, trustee Sullivan.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My comments are the same. I'm not going to bore everyone with it, but I feel stronger about this item than I did the other item, because in my eyes, this is saying we're rewarding bad behavior by not just approving the item, but approving the item plus what we overspent. Now, that might not be exactly right because of the systemic issue, which I understand, and Ms. Mott and I talked about this earlier today, but I just will not and cannot vote for this item. Taking the amount, adding $1.7 million to it or whatever it was, and then just approving it for another extended period of time. Oh, and add another year to the contract time. Is this 5 years or 6?
This would put it into the 6th year.
Yeah, see another bad precedent because we have a policy of 5-year contracts. So I mean, there's a lot to unwind here. And I just stated what I need to state. I don't need to say anything else. Thank you.
So, Ms. Mott, would you, for the benefit of the rest of us, would you explain what you're asking us to do in item 38?
Yes.
And if I'm wrong on anything, please correct me. And I really mean that. All due
no.
respect.
No, I just want to make it clear what we're doing. Go ahead.
As two separate items, 37 was ratifying the spending that has already occurred. So that 4.6 is the total amount that has already been spent. That does mean if 37 is the only thing that's approved, we no longer have any spending authority for under these promotional items contracts going forward. So at least as far as these particular promotional items contracts goes, we would need to stop all purchases of promotional items under these contracts. Because we did exhaust already the 3.3, we went over that, right? Obviously, clearly incorrectly. The board has ratified that amount. So in terms of the total amount spent today, we're now good there. But if we want to continue to buy promotional items in the future, we need that spending authority from the board to continue to do that into the future. So this does give us, the intent was to give us about another year under these promotional items contracts while we continue, and we will work on as we mentioned, we're hoping to roll it into a larger campus retail store contract, which we're working on that procurement process for now. So in a year's time, we would bring something to the board to be the more permanent new 5-year contracts.
This money, additional money, you already accounted for it in the budget we just approved.
Yes.
By not, how should I put this? By not going forward, do we violate or do we, how should I say, are there any contracts that would become in violation? In other words, we become in default to any of the contracts we have in place?
I don't believe so. We would just, because we estimate for the number 37, it's everything that should be spent through the end of this fiscal year. So then with the promotional items providers that's included in your board packet, we would need to stop further spending with them. So I do not believe we would be out of compliance with anything. We would just need to stop purchasing the promotional items utilizing the approved vendors, these approved
Here, I
vendors.
have an idea, if I may.
Go ahead.
Tell you what, I would propose that the board would be interested, and if I think it's a compromise, would be to have an amendment for this item to change the amount to the original 3.3 million for 5 years, not the 4.47 or whatever for 6 years. This way, you can still buy what you need. Needs are still met, but we're exerting some fiscal oversight on the item, on the issue and on the item. There's, in my opinion, I'm not trying to be funny, there's absolutely no reason to increase it and extend it a year. Let's keep it the base year amount, the base term of 5 years, and everybody wins. And if we can't get spending under control in 5 years, we have a really big problem.
Let me hold that.
Yes, sir.
So what are the implications if we don't approve that right now? And we stop spending on promotional items? What are the,
Contractual obligations, is that what you're thinking?
yeah,
of?
that's what I asked. Would there be any, first question was, would there be any, will we violate any contractual obligations? Would we go on default? I understood your answer to say no. Is that correct?
To the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay, so the next question is, if we don't spend any money on promotional items for the next, what is it, year and a half, for next year?
For in the next
So
year.
what is the impact to the college on that?
I mean, I suppose that would impact primarily the marketing departments.
All right, so would they not be able to do their jobs? Would they just didn't have the tools to do it? Would they be able to do their jobs, but at a lesser, how should I, efficiency or effectiveness?
That's an operational question that I'm not sure I would want to speculate on what the impact is to marketing of not purchasing the promotional items.
Chairman, I don't think trustee Sullivan mentioned not spending, or I don't know. maybe-
Exactly,
okay.
correct. I'm not trying to not spend going forward. To me, the compromise, as I said, is to continue spending, meeting the needs of the system and the campuses, but just dial it back by the overspend, if you will, from the previous item, and reduce it by a year, which brings it back into compliance with existing board policy of contracts not being over 5 years.
Right, and I understood that. All I'm doing is just looking at the options.
But if we could, before we move forward, sir, just so that I can understand. On the item, so we're gonna be approving I'm sorry, is it 3.7 or 7 million? Just so that I know what's the number here.
So what it's adding to the total thing, So the 4.6, we're adding 3.7 for a total not to exceed of 7 million. But the 4.6 is what has already been spent. So it would be a new spending of 3.7. And it is just extending this whole thing for a 1-year term. It's not extending it for another 5 years.
So this is
But it
just to
was-
approve
it-
3.7 for next year in
Yes.
spending.
But it was already approved as 3.7 for 5 years. So we're gonna put, how about if we took 1/5 of 3.7 for the next year and extend their contract to that, and does that make sense to you? I think that's what you were shooting for, right?
Close.
Typically, I don't know if we have anyone for marketing, but typically, how much do we spend typically for marketing stuff?
Well, that's where since 2018, over the past 5 years, right, from item number 37, we know we've spent the 4.6 million. But over the past year or so, that the amount of spending has increased. So we've spent 4.6 million over the past 5 years.
What we could do here, ladies and gentlemen, is we could pull this item and ask the administration to rework it. And maybe rework it with your suggestion, trustee Sullivan, and bring it back in September. I think that may be the best and gives us all time to kind of digest this. And gives you another look at how to present this. Is that a fair thing? Do we need to vote on that or?
We do not if we're pulling it. I just want to confirm with Desiree. I didn't hear a motion yet. Is that correct? So if there's been no motion, then you can simply pull the item from the agenda. No votes required.
So I'll just ask for consensus. Do you want to pull this item, have them rework it?
Did we not already approve this?
That was the other,
in the-
No,
that was the other item.
that's 37.
We voted on 37. We have not
No, I mean, when we voted for the other, yeah.
What we were doing when we voted on 37,
No, I'm talking about when we voted before on the majority of the 40.
So my understanding, and Jennifer, you can correct me, I'm just reading from the agenda item, but what the agenda item is proposing is an amendment to a contract that was approved in 2018. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if it's pulled and brought back at a later meeting, I don't think anything would happen between now and September, except for there would be no expenditure on promotional items until until another item is brought back.
Correct.
Trustee vote.
But when you called for us to vote on 1 through so-and-so and skip 10 and did we include 38 in that approval?
No, sir.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
pulled. But what you're also, just a point, I think we ought to pull this, but just a point, what you're asking for is already included in the current budget. Is that correct?
Yes, the anticipation of these expenses,
Okay.
yes.
So again, I would offer the suggestion that we as a board come to a consensus to pull this item, have it reworked and consider it at the next board meeting. I mean, does that sound reasonable to everyone? All right, so we're going to pull this item and have it reworked the next board meeting.
I would like to ask that there be someone take a look at what everybody's spending throughout the district on this, and you said that it's increasing in cost.
Mhm. Yes,
Well, prices might have been going up, but maybe something else is going on.
In your
yeah,
budgeting,
it's been both prices of everything going up, but also just the increased efforts of marketing throughout the system.
so in your estimates,
They're buying more junk.
They're buying, get more promotional items.
so in your budgeting of more promotional items in this budget we just approved, did you factor in any, inflation or whatever, increased pricing or anything like that?
We have the contingency inflation line item, remember?
Say again?
We have the contingency inflation line item. Would that apply here?
Okay, so we're gonna pull this, right? And then we'll bring it back in September and rework it, and bring it back. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, trustees. Appreciate it. Probably
Yeah.
is.
I think that's all for our consent agenda. What else we got here? Bear with me. There's a lot of items here. Bear with me. Okay, financial report, yeah, it's you again.